Here's a question I get a lot of times. I see this all the time. People ask me, I get it on forums too. How do I know if my guitar needs a neck reset? So let's go over that and let's look at three techniques for deciding whether or not your guitar needs a neck reset. We're also going to look at three guitars. One of them has had a neck reset recently, so it is a healthy patient. There's one that's going to definitely need a neck reset, there's no question. And there's a third one that we're going to look at and we're going to determine, does this guitar need a neck reset? So, first thing we need to know, what is a neck reset? A neck reset is when you need to re-angle the neck of an acoustic guitar, Martin guitars, what I talk about most of the time. You need to re-angle the neck according to the body. I don't really like the term neck reset because people immediately start thinking about the neck. Oh, there's a problem with the neck. There's a problem. There's a problem. There's a problem. No, there's not necessarily a problem with anything. And I'll explain that here in just a second. A neck reset is needed, and I would prefer to call it, if I had my choice of words here, post-construction. After the construction, post-construction, geometry, realignment, opportunity. Neck reset is obviously a much more popular term, but that's really what it is. It's a post-construction. So it's after the guitar is built, geometry realignment, because that's what we're talking about, the geometry of the neck in relationship to the body. It's a geometry realignment opportunity. And I like to just use the word opportunity because it's just a sweet little positive word. And it gives you the chance to get that neck angle right where you want it. Now, a guitar can be brand spanking new and need a neck reset. Does not indicate a problem with the guitar. In fact, a neck reset rarely indicates a problem with the guitar. Sometimes it does. Sometimes there's a problem. But that's a special case. That's something else. Generally, a guitar needs a neck reset simply because the geometry has changed. The top bellies up a little bit back here because remember, this thing was a piece of wood, before it was built. It's put together, it's put under 180 pounds of tension. Things change. So the top develops a little bit of a belly here, and it also caves in right here. There's a sound hole right here. The sides are curved right here. And the acoustic guitar wants to collapse at the waist. It wants to fold up right here. I have built a cardboard guitar with, and where it wanted to fold up was right here at the waist. When I strengthened the waist right here with cardboard strips, it quit folding up, relatively speaking, That stopped it. That demonstrates to me that the weak spot on an acoustic guitar is right here at the waist. And my experience is that the tighter that waist is, the more likely the guitar is to fold up. Okay, we can argue about this later on, but there's distortion going on right here, and there's distortion going on back here. The combination of this rising and this sinking causes the neck to change its relationship to the body, and the strings will come up off the fingerboard like this, okay? So basically your neck, this is your neck. Your neck, instead of being at about a 2-degree angle on the guitar, I'm exaggerating, is now caved in and like this. And so your strings are coming from here to here, and they're way high off the fingerboard. So what you need to do, take your neck off and realignment so that it comes down here and your strings come at a much shallower angle. All right, that's what a neck reset is. On a Martin guitar, you're going to steam it out, and you're going to take some material off of the heel right here. You're going to shim the heel back in. You're going to put it all back together. It's not that big of a deal, except for the fact that you guys have to pay for it. And I'm perfectly capable of doing neck resets, so I tend to do them. If the guitar barely needs them, because it's one of the safest things I do. It's not invasive. It's just not that big of a deal. Once you understand how they work and you're careful at it. All right, so that's what an neck reset is. It does not mean there's anything wrong with the guitar usually. Maybe the guitar has too much belly. Maybe it's built a little bit too light. Maybe it's built a little bit lightly. I wouldn't say too light. There's a variety of reasons. Eventually they settle in and they stop moving. So, but if the guitar is brand new, like one of these Martins we're going to look at, and it needs a neck reset, it's not really a problem with the guitar. It just means that when they built the guitar, they didn't put the neck angle back quite enough. It's a little bit of a guessing game because you don't know how much that top's going to belly and how much it's going to cave in and how much it's going to move, and you don't know what it's going to do. If I was building guitars, I swear I would put the neck on, not glue it, use shims, hanging up on the wall for 6 months and let that thing settle in. And if you go back and look at one of my videos where I did the D45 1942 Authentic, and I called that a critical mission because I did not want to take that neck off again. I wanted to get that neck right and exactly right the first time. And I literally put it together with shims and sat there and played it for a month with no glue at all. And then when I was happy that it stopped moving because it was a lightly built top, very, very light top, ebony truss rod in the neck, lightly built guitar. When I was happy that it was done moving and I had a good spec, then I glued the neck in. So that's what I would do if I was building guitars, just because this happens. All right, there's 3 main techniques of evaluating a guitar to see if it needs a neck reset. Now, there are the straight edge test, which you run a straight edge down the fingerboard. There's another check that I've never seen anybody use except me, and you run a straight edge down the body and see what it does according to the neck up here. But really, the number one test, it's not even a test, it's the number one check is your action good, and do you have enough saddle to change the action should you need to? So in other words, is the bridge and the saddle combination optimum for this action? Now, when I say optimum, you see my definition of optimum is pretty tight. My definition of optimum is it's perfect. Factory's definition of optimum is a little bit broader. So Martin, for instance, may look at this and say, oh, it's got some saddle, you can play it, it's within specs. And my definition is much, much tighter than that. So when I say optimum, I really mean perfect. So when your bridge and saddle combination are perfect, and your action is perfect, then the guitar is perfect. Okay? Now, even within that, I can vary a little bit. But really, that's the number one test. Do you have the action you want? And do you have a reasonable bridge and saddle combination? So we're going to check that first, and there's going to be some things I'm going to talk about as I'm doing this. The next thing we're going to do is get the straight edge, and we're going to run it down the fingerboard and see where it contacts the bridge. And that's one of the most common techniques, I think, because it's easy to do, but I don't feel that it's very accurate. And there's cases where it is, in fact, going to be very misleading. But we're going to check it and see. We're going to look at this, all 3 of these tests, on a healthy guitar, which is this first one, a sick guitar, and then one that we're not sure about. Okay, so here we go. So this is the shop's custom shop Bluegrass 16. I've been in quite a few videos now. I reset the neck on this last year when I first saw this guitar, and it was owned by somebody else. And I said, this guitar really needs a neck reset to be optimum. And the owner, of course, said, yeah, go ahead. So I reset the neck on it, and I did a bunch of videos with it. It's in a video where I'm talking about how much to take off the heel. This guitar's in there. It's in another video where I compared it with the short saddle before the neck reset. And I will say that I got the action where I wanted it, but I just felt like the saddle was too low. And for this guitar to really be perfect and get shipped home, I wanted to do a neck reset. So I videoed it with the low saddle on it and a good action. And then I reset the neck and gave it the same action but a taller saddle. So I did an A-B comparison on there so you can see it there. It's been in a lot of ABs, and anyway, it's a healthy guitar, okay? Neck reset. I would declare this guitar neck angle perfect. So, let's look and see what the action is. I always use feeler gauges to measure the action. It's just easiest, most accurate. I use feeler gauges all the time. So what I'm going to do is I set it up on my shoulder here. It's not going to change the action. You can look at it and see. And it's going to set on your shoulder. You're not putting any weight. The reason I do this is so I can see the backlight on this. And this is 90 thousandths of an inch, which is just under 3/32 of an inch. And I'm going to slide it under here, and it's actually a little bit low, which is cool, because I like to fight my guitars. So I'm going to run 84 through here and see what we get. 84. So it's low. No wonder it plays great. Okay, so this has an action of 84 thousandths of an inch, which is less than 3/32, and that's nice. Before you can really say anything about an action, you also want to check your nut slots here. And what you do here is you simply hold the string down between the 2nd and the 3rd fret, and you make sure that it absolutely, barely clears the 1st fret. And I mean barely. Okay? I have lots of videos on setting nut height, but I'm just going to do a quick check on this one to show you that you should do a quick check. Because if the nut slot is high, the action is also going to be high. And so you need to make sure your nut slot and your relief are correct before you panic about having a neck reset. I have had guitars with adjustable truss rods that had too much relief and they needed a truss rod adjustment, and all of a sudden the action was beautiful and I got to raise the saddle, and all of a sudden they didn't need a neck reset. So check these two things first, okay? So nut slots are great on this, and of course they are because I set this guitar up. And then the relief, I'm going to hold it at the 1st fret and the 13th fret. And I'm going to just kind of tap it here at the 6th. Barely any clearance at all, just a smidgen, probably 4 thousandths of an inch. And I'm confident in that because, you know, this is a shop guitar. I play it all the time. It's perfect. All right, so we have a perfect action. It's actually a little bit low, but that's all right, you know, in this case. So the next question is, what's the height of the saddle out of the bridge here? And you can see this one is reasonable, you know? This is a super low action. So if you were to raise the action to 93 thousandths of an inch, gosh, between 84 and 93 is almost 10 thousandths of an inch. So that means the saddle would come up 20 thousandths of an inch. So the saddle would be taller than that for a 93 thousandths action. So this saddle could come up a little bit, but I like the way this guitar, it plays beautifully for me. So, point being is that this saddle can move either direction. It's not really tall right now. So if it was really super tall, I couldn't go up any, and I don't like that. That's just as bad as being too low. In fact, it's worse because then you have to do a reverse neck angle set, and that's sophisticated. Okay? All right. So we have 84 thousandths of an inch. This is a great looking saddle for that action. The break angle is really good. The break angle is where the strings come off and angle in here, and beautiful. I got no issues with this at all. I'm going to take my dial calipers here, and I'm just going to plop it down right next to the E string, and that saddle is 115 tall, which is a little on the low side, you know. It's perfect for this action. So like I said, this could come up 20 thousandths of an inch if I was to raise the action. 20 thousandths of an inch here would put this at 135, and I would consider 125 to be absolutely perfect. My range of tolerance would be on a long vintage saddle like this would be about 140. I would start being uncomfortable at 140, and at probably at 90 thousandths I'm going to reject it. At 100 thousandths of an inch, it's, you know, it's okay. It's all right. I'm not happy about it. 115 I'm all right with, you know, because it's good break angle, and 115's all right. Knowing that if I raised the action, it would be 130, 125. So 115's cool for this low action. All right? So everything checks out on this. This guitar I got no complaints. Let's take a straight edge now. And let's run it down here, and you just lay this on the fingerboard. First of all, if you use a wooden yardstick like this one, make sure it's straight. Because I bought one at a hardware store in Los Alamos, and I was testing a guitar, this guitar, bam, and it bumped into the bridge, and I thought, huh. Later that day, I flipped, by accident, I flipped it over and did the other side, and it clears the bridge by, and I thought, I didn't change anything. I laid that straight edge down, and it was warped like crazy. And so, I've had this one for a long time, and I know this one's straight. You could use a metal one too. I've got a metal one over here somewhere, and I cut it off to be the right length. Lay it down here between the D and the G strings, just because it's the middle. Slide it down here and see what it does at the bridge. So here is a healthy, perfect neck, a perfect guitar. I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to bring it up to you and show you what's going on. I got to see what it's doing. It's clearing. That's clearing the bridge by a very, very small amount. Let me make sure I got this on the camera, because it's critical that you see this. There it is. Okay? So and this is under tension. Under tension. If you do it without tension on it, it's going to clear by quite a bit. In fact, it's probably going to go to about the top of the saddle. So, slide that down there, and this clears by, I'm going to guess, I got to get down there and take a look and actually see how much it is. I'm going to guess it's clearing by about 50 thousandths of an inch. It looks to me like it's about that much. That's 50 thousandths of an inch. So it's clearing by, it's not kissing the top of the bridge. It's clearing by a little bit under tension. So there's our healthy guitar. Okay, so the straight edge test in this case says, yeah, that's good. But the thing is, this is just a check. Again, the number one, the critical thing, do I have the action I want with the saddle that I want? Action saddle. Because if this kissed the top of the bridge and my action was high and the saddle was off, I don't care what this says. What I care about is that my action is off and my saddle is off. And this is just helping me find out what the problem might be, what the issue is. And I use this when I'm doing the neck reset to see how much I'm moving it. But this actually means nothing. It's just a check. It's just a way for you to do a quick and dirty thing to say, well, that looks pretty good. The relief is going to affect that. The nut height of the strings is not going to affect it, but the relief will affect that a little bit. So make sure your nut, make sure your relief are good before you start anything. Alright, so that's your straight edge. Now there's another way to use that straight edge, and this is a little bit harder to photograph the video here. But what you do is you lay this down the body here. And when you lay it down the body, let's go flip the guitar this way. And this is all backwards for me. So I gotta make sure I'm getting this. When you lay it across the body, obviously the bottom of the yardstick here is right along the bottom of the fingerboard, right? Because they're both laying on top of the guitar. Just think of this as an extension of the neck. So, if this was a bad neck angle, then the neck has to be on it at about a 2-degree angle. So, that means that if we have a bad neck angle, you're going to see the bottom of the fingerboard here all the way up to the end of the neck. You follow me? So you would have the fingerboard and the ruler running parallel to each other, and you know that's bad because that neck has to be at about a 2-degree angle. So the neck, if this is the yardstick, the neck has to be back from that yardstick. You follow? Okay, the neck has to be on at a 2-degree angle, but we're running this straight down the body. So what really happens when you do this, and again, this is a little tricky for me to get on camera here because I don't have enough hands, but this is what you're looking at here. So let me take a look at it. Generally, the level of that fingerboard is now going to drop below the yardstick. And so I find this real handy when I'm doing the neck reset to show me the progress. And so what I see here is that the top of the fingerboard is almost at the bottom of this. Almost. If I took the tension off the strings, it would be, because the neck comes back a little bit without the string tension on there. And so when you run this straight edge down the body, like this, you will find that the top of the fingerboard will come almost to here. You see? Try and see. We're going to look at some of the other guitars and you will see that. Now that test is even worse than the straight edge going down here, down the middle of the fingerboard. But I have found it useful at times to just kind of give me a better gauge for what that neck angle looks like, because some guitars are going to require, for whatever reason, because it's got a swelling in the upper bout, or because it dips excessively, or whatever reason, some guitars require more neck angle. And this just kind of lets me know, well, am I really giving it that much angle, you know? I look at that, and top of the fingerboard is actually below the straight edge, and say, okay, it's going to need a lot of angle. That's a third check. All right, but again, the number one, what's the action? What's the action? What's the saddle? Then you start using these other checks here to say, all right, what's my problem here? And do I have enough? Do I need a neck reset, Because if this straight edge, we're going to see it. But if the straight edge is hitting the boom below the bridge, then that's, there's no way you're going to work with that. There's just no way you're going to get the right action saddle off of it. No way. You will also hear people talk a lot about the low E string being half an inch off the top of the guitar. That does not really have a lot to do with the neck angle. What it really has to do is the height of the saddle versus the height of the bridge. So your bridge is usually about 320, 340 off the top. Let's find out on this one. This one is 340, okay? So this bridge is 340 off the top, and we already know that the saddle is 110 out of that, so 350, right? No, 450, 450. 340, yeah, 340 plus 110 would be 450. Well, that's a little less than half an inch. All that half an inch really tells you is how healthy the bridge and the saddle combination are. Now again, if I raise the saddle 20 thousandths of an inch, then I'd be 470, and I'd be pretty close to half an inch, but it's under half an inch. And all that tells you is that you have a healthy bridge system, because you could still have your neck back here. Your neck could still be kicked up like this, and you could still have a very high action, and it doesn't affect it very much right there at the bridge, you see. It does a little bit, but it's going to take a lot of movement up here to make a little bit of movement down here, because this is so close. So that test is just really, it's really more of an indication of the health of the bridge system. And I would just rather measure each of the pieces directly. I really, really dislike indirect measurements. And what I mean by that is saying, well, the string is half an inch off here, therefore the bridge and saddle system is healthy. Well, not really, because your bridge could be half an inch thick, and then you would have no saddle showing off of it, you see? Or your bridge could be 100 thousandths of an inch thick, and you'd have a 400 thousandths of an inch tall saddle. And that's bad. That's really bad. So it's just an indirect measurement, I would rather you just told me the height of your bridge and the height of your saddle. And that's why I don't like this edge straight edge here. It's indirect measurement. What you're really measuring is what's your action and what's your saddle. And this is a indirect measurement. This one is almost like a tertiary measurement, It's so indirect, it's down the line, but it can give you a little bit of a different glimpse into the problem. That's why we use it. All right, there's a healthy guitar, 84 thousandths of an inch here, which is pretty low. I mean, my gosh, I run my electric guitars that low. But gosh, it plays good. And I'm not beating on the guitar, you know. I've got lots of videos, and you can see I don't play really hard. It plays like butter, man. I can get along with this guitar. So 84,000 inch, 115 on the saddle. That's beautiful. Everything's beautiful on this guitar. Let's get one out that I know needs a neck reset and take a look at it. We're back, and here is a 70s 411. I must make it about a 76 or 77, something like that. It's a 70s D28. It's in mid progress, and I know it needs a neck reset because that's the last thing I'm doing to this thing after scalloping and everything. How do I know it needs a neck reset? First of all, I look at it. First of all, let's just measure the saddle because that's what it matters. How much saddle do we have here? That's my first question. And when I'm working on one of the 70s, I always put a saddle that's about the right height in here. So then everything else goes geared according to that saddle, more or less. So we're going to throw this down here. We caliper it, and 145. So what did I say? I said 145 is probably about the limit on a long vintage saddle, but on a short drop-in saddle, it's fair. It's a little bit on the tall side, but that's all right. Here's what it looks. Here's what a 145 looks like. The reason it's a little bit on the tall side is because the break angle right here on this low E string is pretty steep, and this is okay. You know, 145 is all right. I'd be all right with sending that home, but I don't want to go much taller. 150 would be okay. You know, I'm all right with that. Especially since I just scalloped this guitar, and there's a good chance that the action is going to rise in the next 5 years, so he can lower it and have a little room. But I wouldn't want to go 180, something like that. So 145, good. You know, that's cool. If that's what it was, that'd be great. Let's see what the action is, though. 1/4 of an inch. Man, I'm just going to throw some feeler gauges in here, find out what they are. Pretty close. Got it. There's just so many gauges I can't even add them up in my head. 130. Okay? That action is 130. So with a perfect saddle, I've got an action of 130. That's unplayable for me. Maybe some of you guys can play that. I couldn't. It'll go out of tune. It's just extreme. It's an uncomfortable place. No way. That's going to be down to 93,000 inch. So let's just call it. Let's call it 95 to make this easier in my head. So 95, 130. That's a difference of 35,000ths of an inch at the action, which translates to 70,000ths of an inch at the bridge, and so there's no way I could lower the saddle. I don't have enough saddle. Literally don't have enough saddle to go down 70,000ths of an inch. No. Yeah, 70,000ths of an inch. There's no way. That would take it down to, what I said was 145. I'd have about 70,000ths of an inch of saddle left, and that's not even close to being enough. If you take the saddle out, the low E string will clear the bridge all by itself by about 50 to 60,000ths of an inch. Just from the bend of the string won't make full contact with the bridge. So, you know, there's no way. Plus, you know, he's paying me to do a neck reset. He wants the guitar perfect, so it's going to be perfect. All right, so here's a guitar that needs a neck reset. There's just no question about it. With a perfect saddle on it, the action is massive. So what does the straight edge tell us? Every time I reach back, I'm turning the screen on so I can see, make sure I get it. We're going to run a straight edge down here and pump. It plows into the bridge. Let's take a look at it, see if I can get it on there for you. Watch it. I'm going to push it with my thumb and see it come up. So, this straight edge is plowing below the bridge, but it's not that bad. And here's a fun thing that you can do. You can take your calipers, and what you do is you measure, you leave that yardstick sitting down there just off the bridge, and you measure. And this is a wooden yardstick, so it's going to bend, so you can't push down on it too hard. And it's 1.345. I'm actually just going to set that there. Now I'm going to set the yardstick up on top of the bridge, and I'm going to remeasure that. 1.345. 1.425. Almost 100 thousandths of an inch. 90 thousandths. 90 thousandths of an inch. So the yardstick, the straight edge, is 90 thousandths of an inch below the top edge of that bridge. Now, on the CS, it cleared it by about 50 thousandths. So let's just take 90 and 50 and add them together and come up with 140 thousandths of an inch. This is just this is the exercise. So this one needs to move by about 140 thousandths of an inch, roughly, to get the neck angle correct. So it's a 1:3 ratio between here and the bottom of the heel. So let's just call it 120 for a second, because that makes it easier for me in my head. So 120 divided by 3 would be 40 thousandths of an inch. So that means I need to take 40 thousandths of an inch off the heel. That's a meaningless number because I don't really measure it, but what it does is it tells me how bad of a neck reset this is. Because after having done lots and lots and lots of neck resets, generally I find that sometimes it's 10 thousandths or 15 thousandths of an inch, you know. And that's a light neck reset. That's probably what that CSBG took. It just took a little bit to make it perfect. It wasn't really bad, but I took 15 thousandths of an inch off or something and made it perfect. That's a light neck reset. 30 to 40 thousandths is generally what I see on these 70s Martins that may not have had a neck reset. Now this one hasn't. There's no holes drilled here. This is its first neck reset. And generally, so 30 to 40 thousandths of an inch. That's par for the course. And then you got the other ones that need 50, 60 thousandths of an inch. And those are a little bit rare. Those are what I would call, in dire need of a neck reset, you know. Those are the big neck reset jobs. I don't see those a lot, but I do sometimes here and there. I remember getting I got a 1930s OM 28 in, and I was doing the first neck reset on it. And I think I had to take something like 70 or 80 thousandths of an inch off the heel. I mean, it was a lot. Twice, almost 3 times what I do on a 70. It was a lot off the heel. Comparatively speaking, it's still not much, you know. 80 thousandths of an inch. Actually, let's go 40. There's your average neck reset. That much off the heel, 40 thousandths of an inch. That's not much, you know. And that just illustrates the principle here about why when you're building a guitar, sometimes you blow it. Sometimes you don't give it quite enough. Because you're talking about 15 thousandths of an inch between a little too high and perfect. You know, that's precision. You're dealing with wood that you don't know what kind of humidity it's going to, and you know. All right, so here's a guitar that definitely needs a neck reset. The straight edge showed it. The action absolutely shows it. Now I'm going to run this one down the edge here. We're just going to take a look at it, and what I can see is that the fingerboard is in the middle. The straight edge is in the middle of the fingerboard here. There we go. Just hope I don't drop the guitar. Make sure I got this on the camera. Okay, look at where the straight edge is here. It's in the middle of the fingerboard. So that means that neck is not back far enough. So all 3 of these checks tell me this guitar needs a neck reset. No question. No question. Haha, you know, here's this measurement. So this is meaningless because this is going to be almost half an inch, I'm sure, because, you know, everything checks out here. The saddle's good, the bridge is good, and I don't have a yardstick or a ruler over here, so what we're going to do is we're going to measure this and subtract 56 thousandths. So it's 515. So if we subtract 50, yeah, we're going to be down in like about 80, 75. We're going to be 475 to 480. So the bridge system is wonderful. You know, the bridge system is great. but it obviously needs a neck reset. So this spec here is meaningless in this case, because this is perfect, but this is not, okay? So that's a meaningless measurement. This one's okay, but it doesn't tell you much about how much neck reset I need. And there's a few cases where this will lie to you. So it's just a quick and dirty deal. Bump, bump, bump. 100,000, 90 thousandths of an inch, bump. Yeah, it's not much. And this guitar needs a neck reset. So, all right, let's look at our third patient. Patient number 3. This has been showing up in my videos. A 2022 D18 1937 Authentic. So it's a 2022. Ooh, it's pretty new. I did a setup on it as soon as it came in. I got a video on that. Let's take a look at it. Let's get 90 thousandths of an inch because that's the action I want. And I'm not sure if I got that. I got pretty close to it. It's a little over 93 thousandths. I mean, let's call it 93 because it's just a little bit. So the action's good. You know, the action's good. And all of these guitars, the nut and the relief are good because they're my guitars. And like I told you, I mean, I would never have a guitar where the nut and the relief weren't right. That's the first thing I set before I do anything. Nut, relief, done. Can't even do anything until you got that down. So the action is 93 thousandths of an inch. It's perfect. Let's see how much saddle we have here. First of all, let's look at it. Here's the saddle. And just looking at it, I'm going to say it's a little bit low. I mean, it's a little on the low side. 100 thousandths of an inch. Okay? What did I say at the beginning? I said 90 thousandths of an inch is it. That's my cutoff point. So this one's 100. And so, you know, and I wish it was like 125. It just would be better. The reason I wish it was higher is because the top of the low E string is below the level of the pins, and I feel the pins when I'm playing. And I don't like that a lot. I like it better when the top of the low E is just about level with the top of the pins, so that it's a nice smooth surface for my hand here. I don't like to feel the pins. And you know, that's a perfectionist thing. I'm definitely nitpicking. And my pins are well seated and everything, so 100 thousandths of an inch, it's low. Okay, this guitar is marginal. And I would probably reset the neck on it sooner or later, especially if the action changes at all. Right now, it's okay. It's tolerable. I would not want to send this guitar home to someone. Like if they said, this is probably about where that CS was, and I told the owner, I said, man, I'd like to reset the neck on it just to make it perfect. And he said, fine, go ahead. He wants it perfect. I want it perfect. We reset the neck. So if an owner of this guitar really wanted it perfect, I would say, you know what? Let's reset the neck. Because once it's done, then it's done. And I understand it's a brand new guitar. Martin should have kicked that back 10 thousandths of an inch more. In fact, let's calculate it real quick here. I want 125 thousandths of an inch with this action, which I'm going to get because I'm going to set the angle in there. So 25 thousandths of an inch here. Let's call it 30 because it makes it easier in my head. 30 thousandths of an inch would put this at 140. No, would put it at 130, which would be great. That'd be fine. So 3-to-1 ratio. So 30 thousandths of an inch here is 10 thousandths of an inch off the heel. So this heel is off by a ridiculous 10 thousandths of an inch. There's an 11. That's how much it's off by. I mean, you know, really, honestly, that's nitpicking. But I'm a perfectionist, see? 10 thousandths of an inch. That's how much it's off by. Right there. 10 thousandths of an inch. The human hair is about 3 thousandths of an inch. So 3 hairs. Believe me, If you can run a factory and you can get all your guitars within 3 thousandths of an inch tolerance, 10 thousandths of an inch tolerance on the heel, you're pretty good. You know, Bill Collins. Bill Collins is my standard for perfectionism, that guy. Even then, though, you know, I've had Collins come in where I did not a reset, but I did a adjustment on them. You know, they give you a better action to work with, though. So, but, you know, I understand that this is a factory. You'd like to make this 1937 authentic into some sort of sacred cow, but it's really not. It's produced in a factory. So, you know, they give you what they think is right, and if you don't think it's right, then you can go fix it. Let's run the straight edge down here, and let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen? Is it going to bump into the bridge, or is it going to clear? I'm waiting. I think it's going to bump into the bridge. It's going to probably just kiss the top of the bridge. And there it is. See, watch it. Watch it come up. I'll make sure I'm not hitting anything down here. See it come up? Just a little, okay? Let's go ahead and measure it again. Let's find out exactly how much this moved. We should see, that's why that's a nice technique, because it's like, I don't know, how bad is it? So I'm going to take this again, and I'm going to set it here. I'm going to measure, and it's 1.360. Top of the bridge. .420, so let's see, it took 40 thousandths and 20 thousandths, so 60 thousandths of an inch off. 60 thousandths of an inch divided by 3 would be 20 thousandths of an inch. So the straight edge says I need to take 20 thousandths of an inch off the heel. The saddle says I need to take 10 thousandths of an inch off the heel. Yeah. I trust the saddle way more than I trust the straight edge, because that's kind of a flaky measurement. You can bend the yardstick as you're doing that, and you know you can push down that yardstick and you can change your measurement a little bit. And so you know that's not a precise measurement. What really counts is the saddle and the action, saddle and the action, saddle and the action. Okay, so I wouldn't trust that. But what we can say, for instance, is 20 thousandths of an inch is still not much of a neck reset. If that was, in fact, the real number, 10 thousandths of an inch, like I said at the very beginning, or a little bit ago, that's a mild neck reset. It just does not need much, you know? Just a little to make it perfect. Right now, it's good. I can play the guitar, you know, so it's acceptable, but it's not perfect. All right, let's see what this does. This is going to run down the neck, and I'm going to take a look at it first. And then I'll bring it over to you, and it comes to the top of the fingerboard is coming up just a little bit into here. So that indicates to me again, the neck angle could go back just a tiny bit. Not much, but it could go back. Let's see if I can get this for you. Okay? So that's what that's doing. So all indications on this guitar are, does it need a neck reset? No, it doesn't need a neck reset. Would it be better with a neck reset? Yeah, it'd be better. It would be perfect. I could get it perfect. It's not perfect now. It's tolerable. You know, it's within specs. But it's at the bottom end of those specs. So this action is 93 thousandths. I can't get it down any lower. That's it. You know, I'm up against the wall. I can't go any lower. Whereas on that CSBG, it's at 84 thousandths of an inch. And boy, I'm down there in Butter City, you know. I'm not going to go any lower on that action. But I can go up. I can go up on the saddle. And I could lower the saddle a little bit more. You see, so I'm within a range here where I can move up or down on that CSBG. And that's why it's perfect. On this one, on the 37A here, I can't. I'm up against the wall. Bam. That's it. I can't go any lower. So that's why it's tolerable, but it's not perfect. Okay. And on the D28 over there, we're not against the wall. We're flat out on the ground. We can't get the action down. You know, there's no way we can get it where we want it. We could get it lower, but we'd never get it right. It's not even tolerable. Okay, so there's 3 techniques for evaluating whether your guitar needs a neck reset. First one, once again, always, do I have the action I want, and do I have a reasonable amount of saddle left? On this 37A, the answer to that is no. My action is good, but I'm at the end on the saddle. That's it. The action changes one bit, I'm dead in the water. It's going to have a neck reset. And I might just do a neck reset on it anyways pretty soon here because I can. And it's not that big of a deal. I could probably have this neck off and back on again that afternoon, you know. There's a little bit of a risk sometimes of making steam damage, but very, very small. On the whole, it's just a matter of my time and effort to do a neck reset. So I'm sure before too long I'm going to get bored and I'm going to do it. However, I will say this, that on my D28 41 Authentic, it's almost the exact same spec, except the action's a little bit lower. The action's down about 90 thousandths of an inch, which makes it butter. And the saddle is about 105, so it's got just a little bit more on it, you know. And on that guitar, the owner sent it to me to do a neck reset. And I said, you know, it really doesn't need one. I mean, it's okay. And then he had some financial difficulties and ended up selling me the guitar. So I've had it for 3 years now. I still haven't done a neck reset on it. You know, I might, but 90 and 105, I got my back off the wall just a little bit, you know. So I haven't been pressured to do a neck reset on it yet. This one, my back's against the wall. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do a reset on this one just to make it perfect. Because this is a 1937 Authentic, you know. It ought to be perfect. I'm going to make it perfect. All right, the D28 that we saw, there's no question. It needs a neck reset. But I could have told you that. I could have told you that from across the room that it needed a neck reset. But we looked at it. The straight edge went below the bridge. The action was high. The saddle was perfect. We weren't going to mess with the saddle. The action was huge. There was no way we were going to get it. That's the end of the story right there. We're going to have a neck reset. I did scallop the braces this afternoon, so I'm going to let it sit about 3 weeks before I check it again. Let everything settle in, and I'm going to reset the neck to the freshly scalloped braces. And that's illustrating the whole principle that I said at the very beginning, is that if I was building guitars, honestly, I would build them, I'd put the necks on, not glue, set them on the wall for as long as I could stand it, you know. And that's what I'm doing with that D28. I made some significant changes to the bracing, and it would be a mistake to reset the neck right now. It's a bigger mistake to reset the neck and then scallop the braces, which I see people do sometimes, and I'm like, you know, did you get the memo? To me, it's just, I just can't understand the thought process there. Because you know the top is going to change with the scalloping and a bridge plate replacement and everything else that I did to it. Just put the saddle on there that you want, but wait. You know, wait for it to settle before you do neck reset. Unless you want to do it again. D28's got to be done. The CSBG was perfect. Straight edge cleared the bridge. The action is beautiful. The saddle has got room to move both ways. It's perfect. There's a perfect guitar. All right. That's how you do it. If you got any questions, be sure you feel free to shoot me a question in the comment. I will try to explain things best I can. Bye-bye.